Chapter 598. Remember to close your eyes next time looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's expression full of fascination. Di Beichen's heat trembled, and his eyes involuntarily fell on Bailey Hongzhuang's red lips. Every time he was so close to his wife, he had an urge to kiss her. He didn't know what kind of sweetness those red lips would have. She naturally noticed the dark and surging emotions in Di Beichen's eyes. Bailey Hongzhuang's head hung low, and she intended to move Di Beichen's hand, escaping from this danger zone. However, Di Beichen had already discovered her plan, and he directly pulled Bailey Hongzhuang close towards him. He could not let Bailey Hongzhuang escape. The next moment, his handsome face leaned in close to Bailey Hongzhuang's, as he directly tasted that place he had longed for. Bailey Hongzhuang only felt a shadow over her, and Di Beichen attacked her lips, but it was filled with a bit of tenderness and love. Not waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang to escape, her lips were kissed by Di Beichen. The touch was soft and warm, just like the tenderness and warmth of Di Beichen, as if he couldn't wait for her to know his feelings, expressing his strong love. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were wide open, and there was a huge blank in her brain. She didn't know what to do. She just stared at the perfect face of this magnificent beauty carved by God himself, kissing her with emotion. His kiss was gentle, tossing and turning, warm and affectionate. His kiss was also warm. The hot temperature was so close to her, letting her feel his strong and warm affection. Di Beichen pulled Bailey Hongzhuang into his arms. The taste was much sweeter than he had imagined, and had a deadly seduction, which made him reluctant to let go. Bailey Hongzhuang's flesh had already become flushed, and the air in her mouth had gradually disappeared. It wasn't until he felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was overwhelmed that Di Beichen released Bailey Hongzhuang. Looking at the beauty before him, Di Beichen's heart was filled with emotions. He quietly leaned near Bailey Hongzhuang's ear, smiling and saying, "Wifey, next time remember to close your eyes." His words made Bailey Hongzhuang's cheeks become red like apples, and her earlobes were also red as if they were going to bleed. Bailey Hongzhuang felt indignant. This damn guy really liked to make her look foolish, and also dared to laugh at her? Seeing the burning brilliance in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes, the smile in Di Beichen's eyes deepened. Wifey is really cute, especially when she is shy. You scram. Bailey Hongzhuang was feeling displeased. This guy really didn't care for his face. His thin was becoming thicker, and his actions more and more overdone. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang was ready to drive out Di Beichen suddenly held Bailey Hongzhuang in his arms. The broad and warm embrace enveloped Bailey Hongzhuang, and she could smell a faint and intoxicating fragrance. It was the fragrance of Di Beichen. "What are you doing? Go out." Bailey Hongzhuang was ashamed, but she was helpless against this guy's tricks. Di Beichen's hands on her gradually tightened, firmly holding Bailey Hongzhuang, as if to meld Bailey Hongzhuang into his bones. "Wifey, thank you for agreeing to be with me." Di Beichen slowly whispered he had never felt this happy until Bailey Hongzhuang agreed to be with him. Hearing these words, Bailey Hongzhuang stiffened, and her struggling figure quietly stopped struggling. Chapter 599. Hatred. Liu in this life, I will never wrong you. Di Beichen's words were firm and sincere. For as long as he would live, his heart would belong to only one woman. Bailey Hongzhuang's red lips gradually curved in a gentle and happy smile, and her hands slowly wrapped around Di Beichen's waist. "I want to hold your hand and grow old with you." From the moment she agreed, she never thought about separating. What she wanted was only Di Beichen's heart. As for other superficial objects, she never cared for things. With Bailey Hongzhuang's voice falling, Di Beichen's embrace on her tightened a bit, and his smile became even more dazzling than before. "Me too. I want to hold your hand and grow old together." The news that Chen Wangya had actually stood up quickly spread through the imperial city like the wind. No one knows how or when, but it had become a hot topic of discussion for everyone. In the Prime Minister's official residence, Liu was still immersed in the joy of Prince Xianyuan Huan's return, but she was worried that Xianyuan Huan would be displeased after seeing her appearance. Both these emotions mixed, and her mood became extremely complicated. Prince Xianyuan Huan, to be the wife of such a distinguished person, was her biggest dream. After kicking away the two stumbling blocks Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Yuyan, she had finally become Xin Yuanhuan's fiancée. However, she was really saddened by the current state of her face. At this moment, a servant girl gave her a message. Miss Bailey Hongzhuang came back from Songlan College. Hearing this, Li Yuyu had a touch of disgust and resentment in her eyes. That woman has also come back, that is normal. But her disabled husband hasn't come back since she left. Could it be he doesn't want her? Li Yuyu chuckled. Her voice was full of ridicule and degradation in her eyes. Although she could not find evidence, she always felt that the sudden appearance of so many freckles on her face must be due to Bailey Hongzhuang. Therefore, she was extremely hateful towards Bailey Hongzhuang, and she hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang's days would be extremely miserable. Only then would she be happy. Bewitching had been away from Fengbo country for a long time. Although Bailey Hongzhuang's marriage to the crippled was enough to make her happy, and if that cripple had even abandoned Bailey Hongzhuang and left, it would make her feel even better. The servant girl looked at Li Yuyu's face, and her voice was full of embarrassment. Miss Bailey Hongzhuang came back with Chen Wangya. Li Yuyu was stunned, and then her eyebrows furrowed, and in her dark eyes flashed a trace of doubt. When did that prince go to the college? He is just a cripple. Did he go to the college to have himself laughed at? Miss, I heard that Chen Wangya's legs are cured, good enough to stand up. The servant girl said in a small tone. As soon as this was said, Li Yuyu's look changed suddenly, as if she had seen a ghost. Her eyes were focused on the servant girl, and she could not believe what she had just heard. What did you say? Say it again. Listening to Li Yuyu's fierce questioning, the body of the servant girl trembled, and a hint of fear crept up her little face, and she timidly shrank away. Today the Wang Ye and Wang Fei came back. The two were holding hands. They were seen by many people walking on the streets, and now the news has spread throughout the imperial city. Kacha! Li Yuyu's face was stiff and ferocious, and her hands directly pushed the teacup on the table to the ground. How is that possible? How can he stand up after such a long time? What kind of person was Chen Wangya? If the prince had really stood up, then, hadn't he changed into a dragon and phoenix? Chapter 600. That slut, how is she deserving? At the thought of this, thick jealousy and hatred swept through Li Yuyu's heart. As everyone knows, the Chen Wangya had a one-of-a-kind appearance and temperament. If it were not for the disability in his feet, he would most definitely be the most admired man of all of Imperial City's maidens. Even now, although he had been crippled, there were still many women who loved him. Previously, Bailey Hongzhuang had married a disabled person, and this had made her gloat with ridicule at her. Now that Chen Wangya had stood up, what would the scene be like? That slut, how does she deserve this? Li Yuyu was angry. She hated that slut, and only hoped that her days would be extremely miserable. If it were not for Bailey Hongzhuang, she would now be known as the most beautiful maiden in the city. Would she be ashamed to see others because of the freckles on her face? If it wasn't for Bailey Hongzhuang, she wouldn't have missed the royal hunting game the last time. She would certainly be a student of the college, and she would even be there with her fiancé, the crown prince, and become the object of envy of many. Now, she could only stay in her own room, worrying about her face. That woman she could trample under her feet and was worthless. How had she become so outstanding now? Miss, don't be angry, don't hurt your body. The servant girl quickly said. Li Yuyu's face was gloomy, and her eyes were filled with hatred. Damn, how can that Bailey Hongzhuang act so prideful? Did you inform General Dai about this news? A doubtful expression appeared on the servant's face. The general is in a period of mourning because of his son and daughter's death. Recently, he rarely appears in the public. What does Miss mean? Li Yuyu's lips curved in a dangerous arc. General Dai's daughter is dead. Now even his son was killed. Bailey Hongzhuang has returned to the imperial city. What do you think General Dai will do? Bailey Hongzhuang was so arrogant, and there were many people she had offended. She believed that once General Dai knows that Bailey Hongzhuang had come back, he would never let Bailey Hongzhuang off easy. Since Bailey Hongzhuang had offended her, she would naturally want to find ways to snuff out Bailey Hongzhuang's happiness. You go and inform General Dai about his news. Hearing this, There was faint hesitation revealed on the face of the servant girl. Not going. Li Yuyu's tone was scary. I know you will get this job done, right? The servant girl made a sound of acquiescence, quickly saying, Miss, I'll go. She looked at the figure of the servant girl quickly walking away, and Li Yuyu finally showed a satisfied expression. Damn Bailey Hongzhuang. I will never let you stay happy. In the imperial palace. After the emperor, Xianyuan Yutian knew that Di Bei-chun had returned, so his face also revealed a rare expression of panic. In his heart, it can be said that there were 10,000 regrets. If he had known that there was still a day when Di Bei-chun could stand up, he would not have turned a blind eye to all the insults that Di Bei-chun had suffered in the past 3 years. Although he had always known that Di Bei-chun's identity was not simple. After all, any person sent from a cultivation sect would naturally not be simple. It was for this reason that he had given Di Bei-chun the status of a prince, to eat and drink as he pleased. However, after a year had passed, there was no progress seen with Di Bei-chun, and he had been mistaken for the illegitimate son of the emperor, and even the common people talked about it. This was detrimental to his face. Therefore, later on, he was a bit less polite to Di Bei-chun. But after all, who would think that a person who had been disabled for 3 years would one day stand up? Chapter 601 Panic. Xianyuan Yutian was almost certain now. The matter of Di Bei-chun suddenly being able to stand up was absolutely not unrelated to Bailey Hongzhuang, and it was most likely that it was Bailey Hongzhuang who had cured him. As soon as he thought of Bailey Hongzhuang's achievements, Xianyuan Yutian regretted his decision a lot. If he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang would have such achievements now, however the matter may have been, he would not have let Xianyuan Huan cancel the marriage contract. At this person, he constantly wondered why Bailey Hongzhuang, who was such a wonderful person now, why was she so unremarkable in the past? Swindler. This was definitely the best liar that Xianyuan Yutian had ever seen. The most important point was that Bailey Hongzhuang was now so high profile. What could he even do to that Bailey Hongzhuang? Xianyuan Yutian was caught in a dilemma. At this point, his regrets were of no use. The only hope he had was to minimize the damage. The return of Di Bei-chun and Bailey Hongzhuang was undoubtedly an excellent opportunity. He had to find a way to understand Di Bei-chun's stand on the matter. Otherwise, he would really be walking on eggshells. Xianyuan Huan really didn't understand why his father and mother were so nervous after knowing that Di Bei-chun had come back. Even if Di Bei-chun could stand now, he was still a prince of Fengbo. Could he still treat them with any disrespect? Mother Empress, tell me what identity Di Bei-chun has. Why are you sitting here with Father Emperor? Xianyuan Huan looked at Jiang Jining in front of him. He really didn't understand. They were the royal family of Fengbo. They were in existence above tens of thousands of people. There was no need for such worry. He had never seen his mother and father this worried since he was a child. Seeing Xianyuan Huan's incomprehensibility about the matter, Jiang Jining sighed and looked sad. Di Bei-chun's identity is not as simple as you think. In my opinion, you should still find a way to build a good relationship with Di Bei-chun. If he hates you because of what you had done before, then even if it is me or your father, we can't help you. When these words were heard, Xianyuan Huan's expression suddenly changed. He has not expected things to be this serious. It's hard to think. Di Bei-chun's identity was even higher than his father's? This was not impossible, but for such an existence, it was impossible for them to appear in Fengbo. And it was even more impossible to become the crippled prince of Fengbo. As soon as he thought of his previous humiliation of Di Bei-chun, Xianyuan Huan's heart became cold. Mother Empress, you and father, what are you talking about? Xianyuan Huan's eyes were a little anxious. Before he had listened to the guesses of other people, he only knew that Di Bei-chun was really the illegitimate son of his father. Towards the proof of this shame, he was naturally rude and would not be polite. He even felt that even if Di Bei-chun died, he had nothing to do with him. Di Bei-chun, he is from a martial arts cultivation sect. Now Jiang Jining no longer concealed it from Xianyuan Huan. In fact, this news could no longer be concealed. After Xianyuan Huan understood everything, his face became pale in an instant. Mother Empress, since Di Bei-chun has such an identity, when I humiliated and tortured him. Why didn't you remind me? Xian Yuanhuan panicked. At this moment, he finally understood why when Bewitching faced him, it was always like he was air. In fact, comparing the identity of the two people, it was indeed the difference between clouds and mud. Chapter 602. Feeling embarrassed, Jiang Jining over the years, his triumph, his arrogance. Everything in front of Bewitching's eyes was only a joke. If it had been him, he would definitely not have the temperament and calmness that Bewitching had shown. For a long time, he had only considered him to be an illegitimate son of his father, so his dislike for Bewitching was completely understandable. But the true identity of Bewitching was so high, then he had fallen from that altar to having the status of today. Such a thing was simply unacceptable for an average person, let alone being able to endure such humiliation. At the thought of this, Xian Yuanhuan felt that Bewitching was really terrible. His emotions were all so deeply hidden in his heart. He really was a cultivator from a big sect. The situation at the time was very complicated. I as well as your father were helpless. Jiang Jining sighed, and some helplessness showed on her face. Bewitching is a distinguished person, but he fell from grace because of the disability in his legs. When he got here, some people said that they didn't want Bewitching to have a good time here. So I and your father had never stopped you. However, even still, Bewitching's identity is not simple. Once the sovereign returns, or there are other variables, and that person does not admit it, your father and I will become scapegoats. It is for this reason that I and your father have carefully considered everything for the past 3 years, neither letting Bewitching's days be too comfortable, but also not daring to let Bewitching suffer too much. Jiang Jining sighed. For this matter, it can be said that she and Xianyuan Yutian had thought for a long time. Originally, they only thought that after the sovereign returned, with Bewitching's identity, he would return to the sect. But what they had not expected was that Bewitching would stand up. This was like a miracle. Bewitching had stood up after 3 years of disability. Not only that, according to the news they had received, Bewitching had earlier returned to Tiangangzong to clean up all those who had previously acted against him. Today's Bewitching was no longer the same as he used to be, and he no longer had his previous destiny, but was a noble young lord. Even if she and the emperor saw Bewitching, they needed to be polite, and they wouldn't dare to be the slightest bit disrespectful. Hearing this, Xian Yuanhuan understood this. As his mother said, this is the only best way to check and balance between everything. It turned out so. Xian Yuanhuan sighed. It can be said that he had still been quite dissatisfied with Bewitching, and he even had an idea of teaching Bewitching his place. Now all those had gone. He only hoped that Bewitching could forgive him for everything he had done. Otherwise, if Bewitching wanted his life, then he would be helpless. Suddenly Xian Yuanhuan frowned. In that case, isn't it strange that Bewitching agreed to get married to Bailey Hongzhuang? If Bewitching was just an ordinary prince, it was not surprising for him to marry Bailey Hongzhuang. His identity was so honorable though. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang was the daughter of a general, she was definitely not worthy of him. Just as Bewitching had refused all the previous marriages his father had proposed, he could have refused it directly. But why did he agree? Jiang Jining shook her head. I don't know. According to my opinion, it is very likely that Bewitching likes Bailey Hongzhuang, so he married her. For this matter, she could no longer think of other reasons. Bewitching has come to Fengbo to 3 years, and Tiangangzong had not made any movement. Therefore, she and Xianyuan Yutian also felt that the possibility of Bewitching returning was getting smaller and smaller. Chapter 603. Sole Alternative. It was for this reason that they had become less and less worried about Bewitching's situation. In the beginning, they also thought that the sovereign would come back soon, and they had been very good and polite to Bewitching. Later, they felt that this possibility was getting smaller and smaller, and the two gradually let go of their worries, and even ignored it. Still, they kept Bewitching's position in their minds. If Bewitching had really refused to marry Bailey Hongzhuang, then she and Xianyuan Yutian wouldn't have dared to force him to agree. Therefore, at that time, when Bewitching agreed to the marriage, Even she and Xianyuan Yutian were surprised. Now it had come to this, Di Bei-chun did not agree to the marriage because of the pressure from the two of them, but also because he wanted to do it. Xianyuan Huan's eyes showed a faint emotion. Originally, Bailey Hong Zhuang was his fiancée. It was because he had not recognized the treasure. Bailey Hong Zhuang now was so dazzling. On the contrary, Di Bei-chun had a really unique vision for being able to understand Bailey Hong Zhuang's magnificence. This had become the biggest regret of his life. Mother Empress, Di Bei-chun has come back now. I wonder if he will find us for trouble? On Xianyuan Huan's face appeared a touch of worry. It was difficult to think of Di Bei-chun like this. It would be more difficult to face him. Jiang Jingying's face was also very ugly. I don't know, but these things are no longer in our hand. We can only move along with Di Bei-chun's decisions. Looking at Jiang Jingying's helpless look, Xianyuan Huan's heart also became solemn. He now felt that his identity was not noble enough. Even if he had gone to the college, his identity as the crown prince still received a lot of compliments. Although he did not become a student of the special enrollment class, his limelight was not weak. There were still many people in the college who admired him. He always felt that Bailey Hong Zhuang would regret marrying Di Bei-chun, but he did not expect that it was he who was the frog at the bottom of the well. His self-righteous identity and Di Bei-chun's were not comparable at all. He was afraid that Di Bei-chun had always regarded him as a joke. I am going to hold a dinner party and invite Di Bei-chun and Bailey Hong Zhuang to participate, and finally we can find a way to clear this matter. Jiang Jinying's eyes flashed with wisdom. Right now, everything was controlled by Di Bei-chun. The only thing they can do is try to clear up the past things. She believed that Di Bei-chun also knew that they were only doing this because some people had commanded from the shadows. They would only try to push this responsibility to that person. Di Bei-chun should understand the truth. At least, the price they would pay would not be too great. Xianyuan Huan nodded slightly. I am going to apologize to Di Bei-chun. Now, Xianyuan Huan would naturally not be stupid enough to think of him as just a crippled prince. Although he felt very uncomfortable at having to face Di Bei-chun, he also knew that Di Bei-chun was not a narrow-minded person. If he took the lead to apologize and was sincere enough, he believed that Di Bei-chun would not hold too much against him. In fact, this was the only way left. If Di Bei-chun does not accept it, then he would pay for what he had done before. You can think so. I am relieved. Jiang Jining breathed a sigh of relief. Her most pressing worry was that Xianyuan Huan would not be willing to bend. Then their situation would be even more difficult. Empress Mother, you can rest assured I understand. Xianyuan Huan looked firm. This was his sole alternative. Chapter 604 Attitude. Xianyuan Huan. About Li Yuyu, you should be prepared for what is to be done. Jiang Jining thought about Xianyuan Huan's lifelong matter after they had thought of how they would deal with Di Bei-chun. Since Xianyuan Huan was the crown prince, it was not a difficult thing to choose a good person as his princess. However, she didn't know why. Every time Xianyuan Huan chose a fiancé, the chosen princess would have some problem. It was needless to explain. Bailey Hong Zhuang things were naturally known. Bailey Yuyan had been disfigured, and had even died in the royal hunting game. And they had finally chosen the daughter of the Prime Minister, Li Yuyu. There were a lot of freckles on her face. Although she had never seen Li Yuyu since, from the Prime Minister's attitude, the number of freckles was definitely not small. This was the chosen princess, and in the future, she would be the mother of the country. If her face was full of freckles, wouldn't it be too shameful when the news spread? How could she still face the world proudly? However, if they were to break off the engagement and select someone else, she was afraid that Xianyuan Huan would become a joke. The crown princess's position would be like a child's play. It had been changed so many times before the marriage itself. Anyone who heard this would find it ridiculous. At the thought of this, Jiang Jining was really worried. And she also knew that had she not let Xianyuan Huan arbitrarily lift the marriage contract with Bailey Hong Zhuang, then there would be no such things. Hearing this, Xianyuan Huan also frowned, and there was a hint of intolerance in his eyes. Now he too felt annoyed about this marriage, and did not even want to choose a crown princess. Mother Empress, Your son has now put all his heart into cultivation. I am not keen on this kind of matter. It is better to put it aside for the time being. Xian Yuanhuan said. How can that be? Jiang Jining immediately objected. You are a prince. It will be good for you to pick a princess early. Only in this way, I and your father will think that you are truly an adult. But I am cultivating in the Tsonglong College. Most of the time, I am not in the imperial city. Xian Yuanhuan argued. Jiang Jining waved her hand, and her attitude was very determined. You will be the emperor in the future. Letting you go to college to cultivate your strength is just to prove your strength. You will not become a cultivator in the future, but become the emperor of Fengbo. You might meet some promising cultivators in college. You can pay attention to them. If you meet the right ones, you can recruit them back. Most of the cultivators in college are very promising. You are now in college, and many people know you. This will be good for your future. It is, therefore, these reasons that I had you attend the Tsonglong College. However, even if your cultivation is good, that is not your path. Do you understand? Jiang Jinying's graceful face was full of seriousness and warning. She does not want Xian Yuanhuan to forget his status as the crown prince and become a member of those ordinary cultivators. Xian Yuanhuan's expression changed a bit. Now that he had been in the college for a while, he had indeed been affected by the emotions of the cultivators. Now, after listening to Jiang Jinying's reminder, he discovered that he had really gone astray. Empress Mother, your child knows. Xian Yuanhuan nodded. Jiang Jining glanced at Xian Yuanhuan with appreciation. Now after so many things, Xian Yuanhuan had become more mature than before, which had made her very satisfied. In this case, according to how things are going, it is better to invite that Li girl when the dinner is held. It will not be late after we understand Bewitching's true intentions. Chapter 605 Seeing Again. An old friend Bailey Hong Zhuang and Bewitching lived in the Chen Prince's manor, and the days were pleasant and happy as the passed by. Compared to their previous situation, when they had been in the prince's manor, the two of them were now in a different mood. The two of them had the right to take a holiday, and sometimes went to the streets to go shopping. In the imperial city, everyone knew that the relationship between Prince Chen and his princess was really good. They had become the object of envy of many young men and women. They only hoped that in the future, they too would be like the prince and princess, and their husband or wife could love them for years to come. Bailey Hong Zhuang went to the 10,000 medicine shop. Ji Wenbin was also very happy to see her, and the two people talked. Speaking of, the first friend that Bailey Hong Zhuang had made after crossing over was Ji Wenbin. Ji Wenbin had always treated her as a sister and given her a lot of help. Therefore, Bailey Hong Zhuang was also very grateful to Ji Wenbin. Hong Zhuang, how are you doing in that college? Ji Wenbin's face was full of excitement and joy. I haven't seen you for such a long time, and you have become even more beautiful. You overpraise me. Bailey Hong Zhuang had a smile, and there was a little bit of joy on her face. I met many like-minded friends in school. That's good. Ji Wenbin nodded. Prince Chen was also with you, right? I heard that the prince's legs have been cured. Did you heal it? The curve of Bailey Hong Zhuang's lips became a bit wider. Big brother is right. He DBC is very good to me. He is now a student with me at the college. Oh. Ji Wenbin was slightly surprised for a moment. He hadn't heard this news, but after seeing the faint happiness in Bailey Hong Zhuang's eyes, he also revealed a happy smile. That is good. In the beginning, I was worried that you would be wronged if you marry Prince Chen. Now it seems that you are really far-sighted and chose a good husband. Listening to Ji Wenbin's words, Bailey Hong Zhuang felt a little moved. In the beginning, she and Ji Wenbin had just met each other. Ji Wenbin had been helping her, and was even worried she would be wronged in her marriage. In this big city, the first one who treated her sincerely was Ji Wenbin. Yes, your godly medicine square is also developing very well under the care of Du Tianxua and Dong Xiro. Now, the people in the imperial city will go to the square if they have any discomfort. Bailey Hong Zhuang smiled. They both have a talent for medicine and treatment. It's not surprising that they have made this achievement. Du Tianxua and Dong Xiro were both simple and kind, and she liked them very much, so she had left them the book about medicine, and also her experience. She believed that the medical skills of the two would have made no small amount of improvement. In the beginning, it was only a means for her to make a living, but since the godly medicine square could grow to such an extent, she was very satisfied. However, the most important thing for her now was to improve her cultivation. She would not be able to take care of the godly medicine square. Du Tianxua and Dong Xiro were good choices. I understand that your ambition is cultivation. No matter what you do, Big Brother will support you. Ji Wenbin smiled heartily. In the beginning, he had felt sorry for the fact that he was skilled but not a physician. Now after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's any aspects of talent, he did not think those previous words. After a long time talking with Ji Wenbin, Bailey Hongzhuang went to the godly medicine square. Sure enough, as Ji Wenbin had said, the entrance was packed with people. Chapter 606 Back again. Godly medicine square. Dong Xiro and Du Tianxua were very happy to Bailey Hongzhuang. If they had not been taken in by Bailey Hongzhuang, they would have nowhere to go. Ah, you are back. Dong Xiro put down what she was doing and quickly walked to before Bailey Hongzhuang. It was difficult to hide the color of joy on her pretty face. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and smiled. The college is on holidays, so I came back to take a look. You have taken care of godly medicine square very well. And it is the shop that you left behind, Du Tianxua, and I don't dare to neglect. Dong Xiro smiled, rejoicing. For Bailey Hongzhuang, her heart was filled with extreme admiration. A woman like Bailey Hongzhuang, who had achieved what she had, was awesome. Du Tianxua also came over. His character had always been introverted, and he did not know what to say after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang, but the smile on his face revealed his feelings. Ah, Wang Fei, godly medicine square has had good income these days. I and Du Tianxua have taken care of the finances, just waiting for you to come back. Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand. I don't have time to take care of godly medicine square now. The two of you have been taking care of it this while. The income is naturally yours. When these words were said, Dong Xiro and Du Tianxua shook their heads again and again. How can that be? We are just helping you, all this is yours. The two of you are very talented in the field of medicine. After all, this godly medicine square was built by me. I will also be assured if I hand it over to you that you will take care of it. I have given it to you now. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were gentle. She knew Dong Xiro and Du Tianxua's characters. However, she had not done anything in the godly medicine square all this while. It was better to give them this medicine shop. In this way it would be in good condition. After listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's meaning for her decision, Du Tianxua quickly said, You could take us in, we are very grateful. Not only that, but you also taught us medical skills. This is really a good fortune that must have been cultivated by our ancestors. However, this godly medicine square is your shop. I and Dong Xiro only want to help you. You can't directly hand it over to us. He had received enough kindness from Chen Wangfei. He just wanted to repay Chen Wangfei's kindness by taking care of godly medicine square. Dong Xiro on the side nodded again and again. Since you don't have the time to take care of godly medicine square, we will help you. We don't need other things. Seeing that Du Tianxua and Dong Xiro's attitude was so firm, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded after some hesitation. She also understood the reluctance of the two people. If that is the case, then we will do it as you said. However, the earnings from the godly medicine square will belong to you. It's just that I will be godly medicine square's owner. How? The exquisite and beautiful face was warm and full of touching emotions, and Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was also warm and gentle, but extremely firm. If you disagree, then it will be as I said before. Dong Xiro and Du Tianxua looked at each other, and knew that as the matter stood, they had no other choice. Thank you, Wang Fei. The two of them said together. Bailey Hongzhuang just waved her hand and smiled. This is what you two earned by yourself. What are you thanking me for? I just met with Big Brother previously. How about getting together at a restaurant in the evening? And Dong Xiro and Du Tianxua smiled brightly, the excitement on their faces difficult to hide. Chapter 607 Three Foodies. The night was cool like water, a cool breeze blowing gently. Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the Chen manor, pouring a cup of tea to drink. Previously, she had had dinner with Ji Wenbin and the others. She only felt that her mood was very good. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were also very happily touching their round belly. They really liked this kind of joyful atmosphere, where they could have a happy meal. Haha, we ate a lot today. It was really delicious too, this is life. Xiao He said excitedly. Xiao Bai agreed with a nod. This kind of gathering is really good. The food in today's restaurant was also good. Bailey Hongzhuang listened to the conversation of the two little guys, and in her heart, she couldn't help but laugh. These two little fluffs have been trapped in the chaos ring for so many years. They must have had no other problem, except their inability to eat. Baisher looked at Xiao He and Xiao Bai in disgust. These two acted like they had been starved. Although, he too felt it was delicious. But while eating he was much better than those two guys. Baisher was on the table, and his two small claws held a demonic beast core, which was much more delicious to him. Thinking of this, Baisher directly bit into it, a crisp sound ringing. Looking at this ensemble of three foodies, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but feel fortunate that she had a lot of means to make money. Otherwise, these three beasts would be enough to make her poor. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were not easy to raise, and Baisher's demonic beast cores were worth a lot. After studying inscriptions for a period of time in the stone room of the Chaos Ring, she found that the old man in the stone room had given her relatively simple inscriptions. Complicated or high-level ones were not given to her. And like alchemy, she wouldn't be able to refine further with her current cultivation, needing to master even the basics. The same was true for inscriptions. Judging from the grace of the old man, the inscriptions he had mastered were definitely not just simple inscriptions. There were also many stone rooms in the Chaos Ring. She had reason to think that there may be more advanced inscriptions in other stone rooms. However, it was not enough wanting to learn it with her current cultivation. These ordinary inscriptions were enough for her to study for a while. She was not in a hurry. These things could be done slowly, and there were many things more urgent. Just then, a knock sounded on the door. "Wifey, have you come back?" Xiao He and Xiao Bai hearing this voice immediately shrank their bodies and jumped to Bailey Hongzhuang's head. After all that eating, they were a little bigger than before. "Come in." Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's voice, Bewitching immediately opened the door. Upon seeing Bailey Hongzhuang, the handsome and perfect face was also filled with a smile. "Wifey, were you happy going out with them this time?" Bewitching asked. Originally he had planned to with his wifey, but thinking that he and Ji Wenbin were not familiar with each other if he were to go, he was afraid that they would be uncomfortable. If he didn't go they could also enjoy more. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. "I was very happy. I don't have many friends in this imperial city. They are the few I do have." Bewitching's deep eyes reflected Bailey Hongzhuang's smile. He knew that his wife had always been a person who kept others' favors in her heart. Since she had visited them, Ji Wenbin and the other two certainly had some weight in her heart. News came from the palace today. They will be hosting a dinner in the Imperial Garden tomorrow. They specially invited me to come with wifey. What do you think, wifey? Chapter 608 Calculating all old accounts. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes slightly narrowed, the corner of her lips curving in an enchanting smile. Since it is an invitation from the palace, we naturally have to go take a look. They had come back this time to see a good show. Bewitching's identity had become very different now. She thought that the emperor must be having a headache over this. Going to the palace tomorrow, they can also see what attitude the imperial family had. Now the two of them had come back to collect debts. In the past, those who had humiliated them should take a good look at them now. If they still didn't know the right thing to do, they could only take the matters in their own hands. After all, they had to calculate all the old accounts of those who had been so proud. As for the general's family, Bailey Hongzhuang was also prepared to settle this matter. In the future, she was not willing to have any involvement with that general, and the so-called young miss of general's family title no longer belonged to her, because she had never been their young miss, and there was no connection between her and Bailey Zhentao. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, Bewitching revealed a smile. Tomorrow we will see a good show. If wifey sees someone she doesn't like, just teach them a lesson. He knew that over the years, Bailey Hongzhuang had suffered a lot of grievances in the imperial city. Compared to the humiliation he had endured in the past 3 years, Bailey Hongzhuang had suffered a lot more than him. Even now, some of her grievances had not been accounted, and he only hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang would vent all her feelings and be happy in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang's cinnabar lips curved slightly, and through her smiling expression appeared a trace of craftiness and ridicule. This time will be my first time being a fox exploiting a tiger's might to scold and coerce. My wifey has always been an existence that can't be easily provoked. Bewitching smiled softly, his eyes shining with pampering indulgence. After deciding over this matter, Bailey Hongzhuang also felt satisfied and happy. Bewitching, from the herbs I wrote for you before, how many did you find? This had always been a matter of great concern to her. Although Bewitching had stood up, the problem with his cursed constitution hadn't been completely resolved. They must find all the herbs in order to transfer Bewitching's cursed constitution to Mandate of Heaven constitution. As a result, Bewitching's constitution would undergo earth-shaking changes, and his speed of cultivation would accelerate greatly. Tiangangzong has a lot of medicinal herbs. I have searched for those herbs in the sect. Since I still could not find the medicinal herbs, the rareness of those herbs can be seen. Hearing these words, Bailey Hongzhuang sighed slightly. These herbs were indeed not simple. There were still many herbs that were as priceless as before. In fact, it was already much easier to find the herbs with Bewitching's identity. Which 4 herbs are still remaining? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Amethyst Dragon Emperor Ginseng, Cold Flame Tears, Blood Essence Phantom Fruit, and 9-grade Violet Zoysia Pungens. Bewitching's voice was a bit dull. He had already inquired. These 4 were extremely rare herbs. From what he had inquired, they rarely appeared. Even if he had sent someone to go out and search for it, there was still no news. Hearing Bewitching's answer, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't feel it was unexpected. These 4 kinds of herbs were all treasures. Their efficacy was very good, and their growth conditions were extremely harsh. It was not without reason that they were so rare. Chapter 609, made by heaven and arranged by earth. Bailey Hongzhuang had only come across those herbs once before, but it had taken a long time and huge human and financial resources to gather them. I will pay more attention to news about these 4 kinds of herbs, and strive to get them as soon as possible. There was a bright and firm light in her eyes. These 4 herbs were very important for Bewitching's future. If they came across it, they couldn't miss it. I have sent people to other sects to ask for traces of these 4 herbs, but these 4 herbs are really extremely rare. Until now there has been no news. Bewitching was not surprised by this. Tiangangzong was a large sect. Any of the herbs that could be found elsewhere could be found in Tiangangzong too. However, this time it was obviously different. It wouldn't be easy to get it even from other places. We will find them. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. She believed that the heavens would favor them. Bewitching nodded, and there was no sign of depression or loss in his expression. After so many years, he had already trained his mind to be firm. He would not give up even in the last moment. At night, the imperial palace was already very lively. The palace eunuchs were constantly moving around and through the place. Delicately prepared snacks, delicious dishes, and sweet and intoxicating drinks were placed on the table one by one, and the rich fragrance filled the entire hall. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching arrived, the invited officials had already arrived. The 2 of them had arrived late. However, the emperor and empress had not arrived yet. As always was the custom, before the imperial family arrived, at this time, the civil and military officials could also converse with each other. Once the emperor arrived, even if it was a feast with rules not too rigid, everyone could still not avoid the feeling of being restrained. With the arrival of Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang, the original hustle and bustle of the main hall became silent in a moment. The eyes of all the people had unconsciously landed on the Chen Wangye and Wang Fei, who had been in limelight recently. Bewitching still wore a soft golden robe. His aura was imposing. His features were handsome, and his temperament was extraordinary. And even in the imperial palace, No one could stand shoulder to shoulder with it. Liu looked at Bewitching. Although she already knew that Bewitching was no longer a cripple, and she has always known that Bewitching was extraordinary, but there was still a feeling of amazement when she saw him. This kind of temperament, this kind of aura, let alone Prince Xianyuan Huan, even the Emperor Xianyuan Yutian, could not compare. Such a man was really the dream of every young woman. Next to him was Bailey Hongzhuang, dressed in a white dress. She was like a willow, her waist thin, her eyebrows perfect and exquisite beauty. Bailey Hongzhuang had always been a beauty, but Liu only knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was a little more beautiful than before. It seemed that her temperament had changed. The Chen Wangye and Wangfei are really a pair made by heaven and arranged by the earth. This old man has lived for so long, and has never seen a pair more suited. The Chen Wangye and Wangfei are really a pair of dragon and phoenix. Now standing together it is like they have been reborn. The official smiled, and turned to look at Li Qingqian who was next to him. Prime Minister Li really contributed to this marriage. Hearing this, Li Qingqian only felt extraordinarily ironic. He did not have the plan to make Bailey Hongzhuang and Chen Wangye happy. No matter what his thoughts were, now he could only smile and laugh as if he were happy. It is true, this old man also didn't think that the two of them were so suitable. Chapter 6:10 To deflate and destroy, Bailey Haoxian. Liyu's hands had already tightened into fists under her sleeve. Bailey Hongzhuang had indeed changed and achieved fortune. In the past, she had always regarded Bailey Yuyan as her opponent. She had never put Bailey Hongzhuang in her eyes. She hadn't expected Bailey Hongzhuang to reach the point she had today. Wifey, let's sit first. Di Bei-chun took Bailey Hongzhuang's hands without any scruples, and walked to the upper seat and sat down. His beautiful voice was gentle and soft, his gestures revealing concern as everyone watched. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, her distinct beauty peerless, her face overflowing with a clear smile like moving water. Bailey Zhentao's gaze had frozen on Bailey Hongzhuang ever since she arrived, as he stopped in the middle of what he was doing, and as he looked at his daughter again, he had a very strange feeling. Nowadays, the picture of the general's residence was bleak. After Bailey Yuyan and Su Wanjing had successively died, in the big general residence, only the two people, Bailey Zhentao and Bailey Haoxian, remained. Those former lively pictures had already gone forever, and Bailey Zhentao had aged a lot in a short period. Father, ever since that Bailey Hongzhuang unexpectedly came back, she hasn't come to pay obeisance to you. Bailey Haoxian's eyes were overflowing with malicious intent. The reason why his mother and older sister had died was definitely not without Bailey Hongzhuang's influence. The humiliation of their family was at present unexpectedly so unbridled. Seeing her still daring to put on airs, it was truly repulsive. Bailey Zhentao's expression changed somewhat, unaware why. With his previous experience and the matters afterward, he unexpectedly felt that Bailey Hongzhuang had become an existence too high to reach. Don't mind it, allow her to go. Bailey Zhentao shook his head. Over the past years, he as a father had always been harsh to Bailey Hongzhuang in every way possible, never showing consideration to her at all times. Bailey Hongzhuang's current attitude to him was not at all strange. Presumable Bailey Hongzhuang had long since hated him. These days he had understood quite many things. Subsequently, his attitude also changed. Listening to Bailey Zhentao, Bailey Haoxian's eyes flashed with inconceivable emotions. He simply couldn't believe what he had heard just now. His father had unexpectedly let off Bailey Hongzhuang? How could that be? However, Bailey Zhentao's expression, as he drank wine alone, proved that what he heard was true. Damn it! He still wanted to demand payback and exact revenge for his older sister. What qualification did that cheap slut have to act this arrogant? In a flash, Bailey Haoxian stood up. Not waiting for Bailey Zhentao's obstruction, he had already left without asking him, walking over to Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang, in any case, you are a part of the general's residence. Now to yield interests, you don't even recognize your home. Aren't you too excessive? Bailey Haoxian took the lead to speak out his dissatisfaction. The words spoken not at all courteous. Even though other people spoke of Bailey Hongzhuang's strength now, he dismissed it. Like before, He could forever trample Bailey Hongzhuang beneath the soles of his feet, like a pitiful wretch. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes slightly rose, and the corner of her mouth hooked in an alluring smile. So you came here wanting me to you my younger brother? Bailey Haoxian's complexion became stiff. This kind of woman does not have the qualification to be my elder sister. After Di Beichen heard Bailey Haoxian's words, his brows gradually wrinkled, and he sat up straight preparing to speak. But Bailey Hongzhuang stopped him. It happens that I too have this idea. Since we find each other mutually unpleasant to the eye, why act like close relatives? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled gracefully, every movement emitting a noble air. But on the contrary, Bailey Haoxian looked like an ordinary clown. Chapter 611, Invincible. Bailey Haoxian was somewhat stunned. His black eyes flashed with a doubtful and incomprehensive light. He had not seen her for a few months. Why was it that he felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was completely different from the past? He actually felt that there was a feeling of Bailey Hongzhuang being invincible. No matter what he said, Bailey Hongzhuang did not take note of it. I naturally do not wish to be considered your family, but father is here too. You are simply too much. Bailey Haoxian proudly raised his chin. He could use the words of shaming the family. So now he was going to tear Bailey Hongzhuang's mask apart. General Bailey himself has yet to speak, so why are you talking already? Bailey Hongzhuang's lips hooked up in a smile, but deep within her phoenix eyes was a cold gleam. She was clear as to what had happened between herself and Bailey Haoxian before. But now time had passed, and she did not plan on letting Bailey Jintao be completely without hope of grandchildren. Although Bailey Jintao had never treated her well over the years, she did still grow up in the general's household. Bailey Haoxian staggered, and his expression changed a few times. He finally managed to squeeze out, I didn't expect you to be so unfilial. Looking at Bailey Haoxian, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly stood up. Her hands were wrapped around her chest, her eyes looking provocative towards her brother. I am like this, what can you do? Bailey Haoxian was simply too naive. His words had no influence on her at all. Bailey Haoxian was stunned. He thought that she would definitely crumble under such an accusation, that Bailey Hongzhuang would become scared. He never thought that she would directly admit to it. Admitting it. Had she made a mistake? Seeing that his words had absolutely no effect on her, how could he still make trouble? If you have nothing else to say, then you can go. Bailey Hongzhuang sneered. I don't like seeing your face very much. Bailey Hongzhuang, don't be too much. Bailey Haoxian was really angry. The look of Bailey Hongzhuang was simply too infuriating. Why? The lips hooked into a smile, and her eyes were showing a mocking gleam. Bailey Haoxian, last time I broke your arm. Have you still not learned your lesson? Hearing the words of Bailey Hongzhuang, Bailey Haoxian's face suddenly changed. Because of her, his arm was broken, so he could not even participate in the royal hunting game. Now Bailey Hongzhuang had been studying at the college for so long. He was afraid that her strength had advanced by leaps and bounds. He was not her opponent at all. Scram! Bailey Hongzhuang's red lips parted slightly as she spat out the word. In Bailey Haoxian's eyes anger was burning, but he had no way to face Bailey Hongzhuang at the moment. If you can't beat her, it is the same as simply looking for abuse. Although he was very unwilling, Bailey Haoxian could only go back to his original position in anger and indignation. He had not expected that after Bailey Hongzhuang had gone to college, her means had become even more sophisticated. When Bailey Jintao saw the situation of Bailey Haoxian, he could not help but sigh, as he buried his head and continued drinking. Master, well done. Little Black gave her a thumbs up. This was how you should act towards guys like Bailey Haoxian. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled lightly. After dinner today, she was also planning on explaining everything to Bailey Jintao. If Bailey Jintao had been good to her over the years, she would not want to forge it, but the relationship between them had long since disappeared. Chapter 612. Treacherous Liyue, who was seated far away, had some doubts in her eyes when she saw how Bailey Haoxian was walking in front of Bailey Hongzhuang, after which he left angrily. The distance between them was too far, so she could not hear the conversation between Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Haoxian. It was really quite regrettable. Bailey Hongzwang was eating some snacks casually when Li Yue walked slowly towards her. The one who was coming over was not only Li Yue, but also another woman with outstanding looks. The woman was wearing a red dress. She was stunning and charming. The collar of her dress was wide, so that one could see the white neck and the delicate collarbone alongside some faintly exposed white flesh. As the woman was walking, she was both enchanting and charming, and the majority of all men's eyes were attracted to her. Their line of sight condensed on the alluring body, as if every step she made was walking on them, making them feel hot and bothered. "Master, this person seems bad." Little Black was alert. This Li Yue had always been an enemy of their master. Now that she had gone towards them, it could only be for the sake of finding her trouble. There was simply no other reason. The lips of Bailey Hongzhuang lifted in a playful arc. She was curious to see what trouble Li Yue had to bring. Li Yue took her wine glass and sent a provoking look to Bailey Hongzhuang. However, she did not speak to her. Instead, she stood in front of Bewitching. "Wangya, congratulations on healing your legs. It is really amazing." Li Yue smiled. "I will drink a toast to show my respect." As her voice fell, Li Yue directly drank the wine in her cup. Even so, Bewitching was sitting with a look of indifference as he looked at her. He remembered the trouble this woman had brought his wife before. He was not a person who easily forgot. Li Yue was not a person who'd really congratulate him, so she had to have some kind of conspiracy. He also wants to see what the woman was going to do. Seeing that Bewitching did not move, Li Yue's face contained a trace of embarrassment, but it quickly vanished as the smile on her face returned. "Chen Wangya, this is my distant cousin. Her name is Miaoling." Li Yue walked slightly to the side as she allowed Miaoling to go up front. Miaoling has admired the prince for a long time. This is a chance to get to know the prince. Li Yue's expression was smug, and with the move of Miaoling, her smile deepened. She knew that the beauty could fascinate all men. She had noticed that all men present at the banquet had shown interest in Miaoling. Bewitching was also a man. She believed that he was no exception. Although Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching were married, she had to find some ways to destroy Bailey Hongzhuang's happiness. The most unpleasant thing for a woman is when her beloved likes another woman. She deliberately found Miaoling, just for the sake of giving her to Bewitching. With her understanding of men, there was no chance that he would refuse such a gift. Now she would like to see just how Bailey Hongzhuang was getting destroyed. When the men present saw that Li Yue was bringing Miaoling in front of Bewitching, all of their eyes lost their sparkle. Such a fascinating woman, they wanted to bring back with them themselves. But since Li Yue wanted to give her to Chen Wangya, they had no hope. "I knew it, this Li Yue is too shameless." After seeing Li Yue's strategy, Little White could not help but snort. Li Yue's means were really too sinister. Chapter 613. Chen Wangya gets a concubine? Baisher was laying in Bailey Hongzhuang's embrace, stretching its two claws. It felt like directly ripping Li Yue's head off. "Calm down, don't worry." Bailey Hongzhuang stroked Baisher's hair, but a cold gleam was within her eyes. Li Yue's move had successfully ignited her anger. Li Yue looked proudly at Bailey Hongzhuang. She just wanted to see the pain of Bailey Hongzhuang. Baisher looked at Li Yue with hatred. Although the claws settled down, the heart was still uneasy. The face of Miaoling was filled with happiness. Although she was not actually Li Yue's distant cousin, as Li Yue had said, she did admire Chen Wangya. When Li Yue found her, she had not expected anything from the other person. But now that she knew that it was a Wangya, her heart started to beat rapidly. Such a handsome man. She did not even have the chance to see one previously. Yet now she was about to become a woman of the Wangya? When thinking like this, it was difficult to contain the excitement in the eyes of Miaoling. She was afraid that she did not know how many girls would envy her. "Chen Wangya, little Miaoling has admired you for a long time." She spoke the words gently. Her head was slightly lowered and her cheeks were red. The eyes were shining endlessly. Even as a woman, Bailey Hongzhuang felt it was attractive. This kind of charm was indeed astounding. However, most of such astounding women can only be reduced to become another person's plaything. Li Yue's smile widened even further. "So, how do you feel?" Hearing the words, the corner of Bewitching's lips twitched as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a smile. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged her shoulders and gestured that it was up to him to decide. Li Yue saw this action of Bewitching and thought that it meant that Bewitching wanted to bring Miaoling back to the palace with him. But he was worried about Bailey Hongzhuang. Chen Wangfei. Chen Wangye only has you as his Wangfei. The people who serve him is too little. You should not object to this, right? Li Yue's words were a bit ironic. Under the eyes of the public, she did not believe that Bailey Hongzhuang would dare to say no. If she did, once it was spread out, the opinion of Bailey Hongzhuang would become unfavorable. I have always heard that the feelings between Chen Wangye and Chen Wangfei is very good. Now Li Yue has made such a move, I don't know how Chen Wangfei will respond. Obviously she will not refuse. Men has 3 wives and 4 concubines is normal. Not to mention Chen Wangye, isn't he a Wangye? She is so beautiful, no man will refuse, haha. The men present were all laughing. They shared the same feelings about the situation. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged her shoulders. Since you are worried about Wangye's feelings, just ask Wangye. Li Yue's smile shone brilliantly, and felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was succumbing. This was the right decision. Chen Wangye. Chen Wangfei has no opinion about it. Then please let my cousin take care of you. Li Yue's smile increased constantly, and she could not help but feel happiness whenever she thought about how Bailey Hongzhuang was going to be feeling about this. However, while Li Yue and Miaoling were happy, the voice of Bewitching suddenly sounded, letting them freeze on the spot. Miss Li, you have a generous heart. I hope that after you marry the crown prince in the future, you can also think of him. Bewitching's lips rose and released an evil charm, but the eyes were filled with indifference. However, this Wangye does not need your generosity. Chapter 614. Is this kind of woman also worthy? As soon as the words were spoken, Li Yue's expression stiffened, and the smug smile on her face turned a bit funny. What do you mean by this? Li Yue asked. Her expression seemed to say that she did not believe what she had heard before. Such a stunning woman like Miaoling. She believed that no man would ever refuse such a gift. How can there be an exception such as Bewitching? Miaoling was also shocked. The shame she was feeling was evident on her face, and her expression was ugly. She was rejected by Bewitching. This Wangye does not need anyone except Chen Wangfei. Bewitching repeated the words again with a cold face. The cold and firm words did not contain even the slightest temperature, and Bewitching's face was indifferent. In his heart there was only space for Bailey Hongzhuang. In addition to Bailey Hongzhuang, all women were simply rocks to him. If Li Yue likes the crown prince, it is better to help the crown prince. According to what I know, it is very appropriate to marry with your distant cousin. As for this Wangye's house, you don't have to worry about it. When the voice of Bewitching fell, everyone present were stunned, their faces mixed with different colors. It was good fortune for Wangye to be sent such a beautiful woman. Who would have thought that Chen Wangye would suddenly turn cold and refuse? However, there was a certain truth in what Chen Wangye said. Li Yue is just a noble lady. It is far too much for her to try and force him to agree. Li Yue's face was ugly, a sharp contrast to the previous smug expression. I am just trying to be generous, Li Yue argued. Miaoling will be able to serve you well. The evil charm in Bewitching's smile increased, and his line of sight landed on Miaoling for a moment. He then raised his eyebrows. Is this kind of woman worthy? Li Yue's face was black and blue. The words of Bewitching had clearly refused. She did not understand. Miaoling was stunning from any angle you looked at her. How could she be unworthy in the eyes of Bewitching? Miaoling was not worthy. How was Bailey Hongzhuang? Miaoling's eyes were red, and she looked at Bewitching with anger. She was originally sincere, but now she was despised by Bewitching. What was she supposed to do? Li Chengkane was also amazed. He felt that his daughter's idea was good. As long as Miaoling was married to Chen Wangye, she had many opportunities to provoke Bailey Hongzhuang and cause strife between her and Bewitching. This trick, which would work on any other man, was now directly defeated? Before it had even begun, Bewitching had refused directly? Haha, Bewitching is too domineering, Little Black said excitedly. This is good, I like it. Little White was also happy. For this kind of trick, only such a face-slapping method worked. Baisher was not uncomfortable anymore. Li Yue's eyes were filled with anger. In the past she did not see Bewitching being this indifferent. Was Bailey Hongzhuang really so charming? After Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang got together, they refused the temptation of others? With a slight turn, Li Yue could not help but glance at Bailey Hongzhuang. The lips of Bailey Hongzhuang were curled into a sneer, ridiculing Li Yue and her way of trying to provoke her. It is doomed to fail. Bailey Hongzhuang, don't be too proud. Li Yue said coldly. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly at the moment, the smile the same as always. Li Yue, you care so much about me. Don't you worry, when the crown prince comes, I will also suggest this to him. Listening to the words of Bailey Hongzhuang, Li Yue's face turned ugly, and she suddenly felt a bad premonition. Was Bailey Hongzhuang going to use the same trick? As soon as she thought of this, Li Yue's heart clenched. His Royal Highness had never shown her any affection, so how could she give such an enchanting woman as Miaoling to his Royal Highness? Bailey Hongzhuang, don't even think of that, it is impossible. Li Yue growled. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged indifferently. It didn't matter if she did it or not. Seeing the behavior of Bailey Hongzhuang, Li Yue's heart was full of doubts. No matter what, she couldn't let Bailey Hongzhuang use the same trick to avenge her. Li Yue immediately turned around in an attempt to get Miaoling to leave. She had to have Miaoling away from the palace before the crown prince arrived. However, just at that moment a palace eunuch's voice sounded. The emperor is arriving. The queen is arriving. The crown prince is arriving. The sharp voice made Li Yue pause her steps. Her heart could not help but feel a sense of panic, especially when everyone stood up to bow respectfully to the emperor and the others. The emperor, the empress, and the crown prince sat on the main platform, right in front of all the people. The emperor and the empress sat in the center. The crown prince was seated slightly to the side. We have seen the emperor, the empress and his royal highness. Everyone respectfully called out. Xianyuan Etienne had a warm smile on his face, but the aura he exuded was putting everyone in the hall under pressure. Today we are gathered at a celebration banquet to celebrate the crown prince, Chen Wangye, and Chen Wangfei. The Qing dynasty has such good fortune. Xianyuan Etienne's gaze could not help but fall on Bewitching. After seeing him again half a year later he was shocked. Even though the appearance of Bewitching had not changed much compared to the past, the sparkle in his eyes were completely different. The confidence and aura that was surrounding him was one that only peerless geniuses could possess. Now when he saw Bewitching again, he could not help but feel a bit of awe in his heart. Listening to Xianyuan Etienne, the hearts of the officials were somewhat doubtful. They had thought that this celebration was purely for the sake of his royal highness. How could he bring Chen Wangye and Chen Wangfei into it? Although Chen Wangye and Chen Wangfei were now students of the college, their status in the imperial city was not good. One was the waste of the general's household, the other was an abandoned Wangye, who was rumored to be an illegitimate child. Why did the emperor suddenly change his attitude today? It is not only Xianyuan Etienne, but also the crown prince who could not help but look at Bewitching. In fact, today's banquet was held exclusively for Bewitching, and Bewitching was the real main character. Li Yue's eyes landed on Xianyuan Huan's body, and the black eyes were filled with love. She had been admiring Xianyuan Huan for a long time, and now she had become the future crown princess. But she had been separated from Xianyuan Huan for such a long time while he had been at the college. Today she saw Xianyuan Huan again, and her heart could not help but beat rapidly. After exchanging a look with Jiang Jinying, Xianyuan Huan slowly walked from the podium, where they were seated towards the front of Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching. Li Yue saw Xianyuan Huan's approach, and only thought that perhaps he had seen her before when he arrived. Her heart was beating even more rapidly, and her eyes were filled with love and hope. She would never have thought that Xianyuan Huan would not look at her at all, and instead looked directly at Bewitching. Chen Wangye. Bewitching's eyebrow rose slightly, and he seemed lazy and comfortable as he looked at Xianyuan Huan in front of him. Since Xianyuan Huan had an important position, everyone were carefully noticing his actions. However, when they saw that Xianyuan Huan was standing in front of Bewitching, but Bewitching was still sitting, and not had any intention of getting up, their faces changed. Chen Wangye is too bold. His Royal Highness has come to him in person. How can he not rise? Even if there is a relationship of students between them when they are at Songlong College, this is not the college but the royal court. He has to follow the normal etiquette. Xianyuan Jing had a hint of coldness in his eyes as he said, Bewitching is really looking for death. This Xianyuan Jing was the one who, together with Xianyuan Huan, had pushed Bewitching down from the 3rd floor. And he ended up hanging in the air. Because of that incident he lost his face. For a while he dared not even appear in sight of anyone. Because of this incident he hated Bewitching more and more. Do you need something, Your Royal Highness? Bewitching did not have a good impression of Xianyuan Huan. The humiliation he had received in Fengbua country was mostly from him. How dare you have such an attitude towards His Royal Highness? Do you not want to live? Li Yue spoke up. The crown prince was to be the monarch in the future. An illegitimate child dared to slight the crown prince like this. It was simply looking for death. Xianyuan Huan was currently thinking about how to apologize to Bewitching when Li Yue's sudden words scared him. He carefully observed Bewitching, and upon seeing that he was not angry because of it, Xianyuan Huan coldly told Li Yue, Miss Li, this matter has nothing to do with you. Your Royal Highness, Chen Wangye's attitude is a crime. He should be dragged out and beaten with 50 blows. Li Yue's voice was unable to hide the eagerness within. The previous episode had made her very unhappy, and now that Bewitching was acting so arrogantly, she wanted to take the opportunity to beat him. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved upwards. It seemed that Xianyuan Huan had already known the origin of Bewitching. Now he was here to ask for forgiveness. Li Yue's obstruction at this time was tantamount to finding trouble for him. Your Royal Highness, Crown Prince, she said I should be beaten with 50 blows. Bewitching's smile was easy as he ridiculed Li Yue and repeated what she had said. What I said is already light. You are making such a big act of rebellion. Li Yue stood up, her eyes once again a little smug, who let Bewitching refuse to toast, only to be forced to drink as punishment. She was going to make Bewitching regret it. Xianyuan Huan could not help but swear. This Li Yue was really an idiot. Xianyuan Huan was doing his best to try and please Bewitching, but all Li Yue was doing was keeping on talking about punishing him. Slap! The crisp slap landed on Li Yue's face. His face was full of disgust as Xianyuan Huan shouted, I told you to shut up. Did you not hear it? Everyone present had their jaws dropping in shock. It was simply too strange a response from the Crown Prince. What Li Yue said was not bad, but His Royal Highness actually slapped her face in front of everyone. What happened to His Royal Highness? Why is he so polite to Chen Wangye? I don't know. It is really puzzling that he will beat the future Crown Princess for the sake of Chen Wangye. Li Yue was beaten by this slap. A burning pain came from her cheek. She could not believe what was happening in front of her eyes. An unspeakable sense of shame began spreading in Li Yue's heart. First she was scorned by Bewitching, and now she was slapped in the face by His Royal Highness. She had become the object of ridicule. Li Chengqian's face was difficult to look at. He could not understand what Li Yue had done to provoke the Crown Prince's anger. Your Highness, how can you do this to me? Li Yue's eyes were red and filled with tears. However, Li Yue had been hit on the face just before, and now that she was speaking, the veil which she had been wearing quietly fell to the floor. Wow! After seeing the true face of Li Yue, everyone were in a daze, their eyes filled with incredulity. They saw that Li Yue's white face was covered in dense freckles. The original beauty had been covered, and it was not only because of the mark after the slap. Where was the most beautiful girl in the city? It was simply an ugly woman with freckles. I heard that Miss Li had a lot of freckles on her face, but I did not think it would be very serious. Now that I have seen it, it is indeed very ugly. How can someone look like this and be our crown princess? What if she is seen by the other countries? They will think we have no beautiful women. No wonder Miss Li has always worn a veil since then. This kind of face is really unappetizing. The eyes of everyone fell on Li Yue's body. Since way back everyone had been curious about Li Yue's face, but now that they had seen it they felt shocked. Li Yue had not noticed that her veil had fallen before she heard the people talk around her. Her expression was suddenly filled with embarrassment. Her cheeks became red, and it was difficult to endure the shame. Xianyuan Huan was also stunned. Even though he had suspected that the problem with Li Yue's face was serious, he had not thought it would be this serious. Having such a face, he was afraid it was impossible to even eat rice. How was he supposed to accept it? Li Yue quickly picked up her veil and put it on her face. Facing the eyes of everyone, she wanted to find a place to sneak into. So Miss Li turned out to look like this. She really can't be the crown princess. Jiang Jining said after a moment of surprise. That is true. Xianyuan Yutian was sullen as he nodded his head, and his gaze was stern when he glanced at Li Chengqian. Li Chengqian's face changed when he felt the anger of Xianyuan Yutian. In order to avoid his daughter being abandoned as a crown princess, he had always concealed the matter while looking for a cure. He never thought that today it would be completely exposed, and he was worried that the emperor would not easily spare him. Li Yue quickly returned to her original seat together with Miolin, and her head was lowered, but she could still feel that everyone's gaze was still focused on her. Xianyuan Huan did not care where Li Yue went, and turned back to Bewitching. I want to apologize to you for what I did before. Next, Xianyuan Huan bowed to the emperor. His attitude was completely sincere. I was stupid before, I was truly ignorant. I humiliated you, but I hope that you can forgive me. When everyone saw that Xianyuan Huan was sincerely apologizing to Bewitching, they looked as if they had seen a ghost. It was unbelievable. Xianyuan Huan was the crown prince. How could he apologize to Bewitching? Xianyuan Jing was directly choking on his tea, his eyes widened. What was happening today? Was the sun rising from the west? While everyone were horrified, they all could not help but look at the emperor and the empress sitting above. However, both of them were indifferent. Obviously, they approved of the actions of Xianyuan Huan. It was indeed a ghost. Bewitching looked indifferently at Xianyuan Huan. He never spoke, but in the silence Xianyuan Huan's forehead was oozing cold sweat. If you feel that everything I have done can't be forgiven, then just kill me. I hope that you can forgive my mother and father. They were also forced and were helpless. Bailey Hongzhuang was surprised and her eyes had a strange color. At this point she thought that at least Xianyuan Huan was still somewhat manly. When the voice of Xianyuan Huan fell, the entire hall was silent. Everyone opened their mouths, and one could hear a needle drop to the floor. Anyone who saw this could understand the seriousness of the situation. If there was no reason, Xianyuan Huan would never do this. When thinking about it carefully, everyone understood that Bewitching was not the illegitimate son of the emperor. Otherwise Xuanhuan Yuan had no reason to be lowering himself like this. As a result, the identity of Bewitching could only be terrible. Bailey Haoxuan's eyes widened, and the situation changed so fast that he could not accept it at all. It was hard to understand. Is the identity of Bewitching even more noble than the crown prince? Then, what about Bailey Hongzhuang, the wife of Bewitching? Bewitching looked at Xianyuan Huan for a long time. Xianyuan Huan's whole body was feeling powerless, and then he finally said, "What you did to me, I do not care, but I can't forgive you for what you did to my lady." Xianyuan Huan's childish actions, he had never really taken them to heart. If he wanted to resist, Xianyuan Huan would not know how many different ways he could have died. The reason he was enduring these humiliations was to let those people relax their vigilance. Towards Xianyuan Yutian, he also has no feeling. After all, this was not the decision a monarch of a small dynasty could control. He came back this time, not to avenge himself, but to let his lady let go of her bad breath. For more than a decade, Bailey Hongzhuang had been sad, and he was extremely distressed. Nowadays, as Bailey Hongzhuang's man, he naturally wanted to give her the best. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the excellent man that was in front of her, and she could not help but feel moved deep in her heart. He was so thoughtful, and a different kind of talent. He had especially returned to the Fumbua country for the sake of getting her justice. All along she thought that Dibei-chun had returned to Fumbua to cleanse the humiliation he had suffered here. But now it seemed that she was wrong. In the heart of Dibei-chun he had never looked at Xianyuan Huan's previous humiliation of him. He just ignored the humiliation he had suffered in Fumbua. Xianyuan Huan was shocked. He had thought that Dibei-chun would not let him go. He had never expected that he would say such a thing. Looking across the table, he saw the moving and affectionate feelings in the eyes of Bailey Hongzhuang. He suddenly understood why Bailey Hongzhuang had picked Dibei-chun between the two of them without hesitation. You have to know that at first, Bailey Hongzhuang did not know the identity of Dibei-chun. Dibei-chun was just a disabled Wuxia who had nothing at all, while Xianyuan Huan was a high-ranked prince. At this point, he could not compare to Dibei-chun. So the only woman who had taken root in his heart had become Dibei-chun's. In that instant, everyone's eyes were condensed on Bailey Hongzhuang. Even if the emperor, the empress and the crown prince did not say it, they already understood that Dibei-chun was not a simple figure. Obviously Dibei-chun was here to help Bailey Hongzhuang. Li Yue was pale like paper. At this moment she finally understood why His Royal Highness had just taken that attitude towards her. The identity of Dibei-chun is above the crown prince. How can this be? An incredible feeling spread in her heart. At that time the disabled prince that was ridiculed by everyone had now turned to such high. She and her father had together framed, but also pushed Bailey Hongzhuang to such a high position? The most important thing was that the Wuxia was so fond of Bailey Hongzhuang. First he had threatened and said that he only wanted Bailey Hongyuan. Now he had returned to the Fumbua country just to make her get rid of her bad breath. What kind of doting was this? How awkward. Li Yue's hands in her sleeves were clenched into fists. The nails were deeply embedded in the palm of her hand, drawing blood. All that Bailey Hongzhuang has now was all contributed by her. She wanted to let the Bailey Hongzhuang fall into the dust. Let everyone trample upon her. Never would she have thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was now a pearl that shone brightly. Li Qingqian's face was also extremely ugly. This was a huge, unbelievable contrast. The chicken became a phoenix. This rare phenomenon actually appeared in front of him. Bailey Jintao stood up in shock. His face was filled with nothing but shock. He had already regretted it very much. Now that he saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Dibei-chun, he simply regretted it so much that he did not even know what to say. He was a real idiot. He could not imagine that if he always treated Bailey Hongzhuang well, the current glory would belong to the general estate. With the existence of a son-in-law like Dibei-chun, even if he wanted the entire country of Fumbua, was that really difficult? However, everything that should have belonged to him had been ruined by his own hands. Bailey Hongzhuang was also stunned at this moment, and there was only one idea in his mind. How was it possible? Xianyuan Huan turned around and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. He had indeed made a pair with her for many years. Once upon a time, Bailey Hongzhuang had looked at him with eyes of love, but he had hooked up with Bailey Yian, and even hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang would die. Next, under the horror-filled eyes of everyone, Xianyuan Huan straightened his back in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. He had hurt Bailey Hongzhuang. In order for the wedding to be withdrawn, he had repeatedly insulted her, and also regarded their marriage as a joke, a stain that could not be washed off. It is also because of this attitude that Bailey Hongzhuang's life was so difficult. If it was not for Bailey Hongzhuang who saved him back when he was sick, then he would already have died. Therefore, even if it is awkward, he was willing. I am sorry. Xianyuan Huan's voice was loud and full of apologies. He used to be arrogant, but after experiencing all the things that followed, he also felt that he could not go on like that. Although he was now kneeling in front of Bailey Hongzhuang, he felt that his life was finally straight. The crowd was stunned. The entire hall was deadly silent. If the scene was passed out, it was likely that no one would believe it. Xianyuan Jing's legs were also wobbling. At the beginning he had ridiculed Bailey Hongzhuang. Now that she was back, he did not know if she wanted to deal with him. Bailey Hongzhuang was calm, and looking at Xianyuan with an indifferent gaze. This man originally disgusted her. If it was not for Xianyuan Huan, the previous Bailey Hongzhuang would not have committed suicide and would not have been swallowed up. Therefore Xianyuan Huan owed the life of Bailey Hongzhuang. Later on Xianyuan Huan changed a few ways. Biali Yuyan died in her hands. But Xianyuan Huan did not say it out, not wanting to create troubles for her. After experiencing many things, she was also a little bit indignant, but the rest was just indifferent. She can see that Xianyuan Huan was truly remorseful. The previous things had already happened, and he couldn't change it even if she wanted to. Nowadays she no longer cared about this. The only thing that mattered to her was the man who was willing to shelter her from the wind and the rain. As for everything before, let it end here. Xianyuan Huan stared at Bailey Hongzhuang, and if she picked to kill him, he would not say anything in defense. Looking to the side, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the emperor and the empress up high on the platform. Both their faces were filled with apologized. Although Bewitching was treated like this in Fengbua country, they were helpless. Forget it, just get up. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips parted slightly. Her eyes were calm and indifferent, as if Xianyuan Huan in front of her was merely a stranger whom she had never met before. The officials present heard the words of Bailey Hongzhuang, and they were relieved. Fortunately Bailey Hongzhuang chose to forgive the prince, otherwise it really became hands-on. They did not know how to clean up the mess. However, Xianyuan Huan's heart was even more heavy after seeing the indifference in the eyes of Bailey Hongzhuang. If she hated him, at least he still had a place in her heart. But with the current attitude, it was obvious that she regarded him as a stranger, not even worthy of hate. There was a bit of surprise in Bewitching's eyes. Bailey Hongzhuang had been humiliated so much over the past few years, but now it was easily resolved. Even so, Bewitching looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, and he understood her. The reason that she had made this decision was not because of the other people, but because she genuinely had put it down. After really letting it all go, there was no need to care about it. Even if Xianyuan Huan died in front of her, she would feel nothing. Perhaps this scene was more desirable than if she had angrily punished everyone. If she had been immersed in the original pain, Bailey Hongzhuang would not have been happy. Only after being able to put it down would she be able to look forward to a new tomorrow. Xianyuan Huan also slowly stood up, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang, who was so generous and had let him go. He was even more ashamed when thinking about it. Although he was bigger than Bailey Hongzhuang, he could not compare to her. It was awkward. Suddenly the eyes of Bailey Hongzhuang fell onto Li Yue, who was not too far away. Since, at this point in time, Xianyuan Huan was not looking for trouble with her, she could leave him be. But Li Yue wanted to make her unhappy, so it would not be her style, unless she fought back. Feeling the gaze of Bailey Hongzhuang, Li Yue's heart sank slightly. Why was she so unlucky? If she had known that the identity of Bailey Hongzhuang was completely different from what she had expected, then she would never have dared asking for trouble today. But she was no prophet, so she could not have expected it. I think that the future crown princess is too ugly, not at all suitable for you. It is better to abandon her. What do you think? Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved slightly, as they were drawn into an enchanting smile, when she looked at Xianyuan Huan. Since Li Yue wanted to be a crown princess, she will ensure that she did not become a crown princess. Since she was intending to destroy the feelings between Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching, there was no way she was going to forgive her. As soon as it was said, everyone's eyes landed on Li Yue's body. The face underneath the veil was rapidly paling. Hearing the words, Xianyuan Huan nodded his head without hesitating. Okay. Li Yue's body trembled and her face was as pale as a corpse's. She had waited for such a long time to become a crown princess. Now, just because of the words of Bailey Hongzhuang, her dreams had been shattered. The efforts had been turned into nothing. However, everything was done by herself. If it was not for her initial intention of provoking Bailey Hongzhuang today, perhaps the situation would not have become this serious. In my opinion, her father has hidden it for so long. Bewitching interjected and Li Qingqian's face immediately changed. An unspeakable panic spread in his heart. His daughter was no longer the future crown princess, but he could not afford to let it implicate him. However, Xianyuan Yutian did not hesitate after hearing Di Beichen's words. Come here. Take away the position of Li Chengqian as our prime minister, and let him become a civilian. The guards immediately went into the hall and took off Li Chengqian's black silk hat. He was then unceremoniously dragged out of the hall. Di Beichen. While he was being dragged out, Li Chengqian was unwilling and was shouting, but for what he was saying, no one was in the mood to listen. Since Li Chengqian had been demoted to a civilian, Li Yuyue naturally had nothing else to do at the banquet. She too was driven out of the hall. This was the last time they entered the palace in their lifetimes. Li Yuyue kept yelling. Her eyes were filled with hatred for Bailey Hongzhuang. But although she was yelling, no one cared. The royal banquet ended with everyone shocked. Xianyuan Yutian sealed the information, and everything that had transpired stayed hidden. No gossip was spread. Di Beichen's identity was extraordinary, and they all understood the seriousness. And after what happened at tonight's banquet, they all took it for granted that they had to stay silent. For some time, although the military and civil officers were unaware of what had happened, they still told their families that they should not offend the Chen Wangya. After the banquet ended, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen went to General Bailey's home. In Bailey Hongzhuang's memories, this place had never brought her even 1 ounce of joy, and all of the memories were unbearable. She wanted to go here, for this would be the last time she came back. After today she would end all her relationship with the general. Bailey Jintao had not expected that Bailey Hongzhuang would come. He blinked a few times, and was so shocked that he failed to believe his eyes. He wanted to say something, but he did not know where to start. Bailey Jintao knew that Bailey Hongzhuang had already been very good to him, and had to thank her for not making trouble for him at today's banquet. Otherwise his end would have been just as bad as Li Chinqian's. Bailey Hongzhuang, how come you are here? Bailey Haoshuan did not dare to disrespect Bailey Hongzhuang at this moment. Otherwise, as long as Di Beichen said the word, his life would be gone. Bailey Hongzhuang faintly glanced at Bailey Haoshuan, but she ignored him and turned to Di Beichen. Wait for me here for a while. Di Beichen nodded slightly. Go on. He already knew Bailey Hongzhuang's plan. The reason that she did not make any problems for Bailey Jintao today was because she had grown up in the general's house, and also mainly because of Qin Yayun. Bailey Haoshuan's face was a bit ugly when he realized that Bailey Hongzhuang was ignoring him, but he still dared not speak. General Bailey, let's go inside, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Listening to the name that Bailey Hongzhuang called out, Bailey Jintao knew that she had not forgiven him. His face looked slightly lost, and it was completely different from usual. Okay. Inside the house, Bailey Jintao was seated opposite Bailey Hongzhuang. He was now very uncomfortable whenever he faced her. This was a change that he himself had not even realized. The room was silent, and the atmosphere slightly tense. Bailey Hongzhuang was the first to open her mouth and say, General Bailey, I am here to tell you something. Go on. Bailey Jintao nodded his head. I am actually not your daughter. When the words came out, Bailey Jintao's face suddenly changed. He was confused, and the difference between the old Bailey Hongzhuang and the new was too obvious. Was the woman in front of him not the real Bailey Hongzhuang? Who are you? Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand and explained. General Bailey, you've misunderstood. I really am Bailey Hongzhuang, but I am just not your child. In the beginning, Mrs. Qin wanted to win your affection by pretending to be pregnant. Truth was that she wasn't with child. I am just a child she picked up and raised. How is this possible? Bailey Jintao looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with shock. He could not believe that what she said was the truth. The look on Bailey Hongzhuang's face was casual as she continued. You had not seen her since the moment she said she had become pregnant, so the lie was not seen through. In fact, I also first learned about this when I was sorting through Mrs. Qin's heirlooms. Her diary stated everything very clearly. I believe it cannot be fake. Bailey Jintao sunk into silence. The words of Bailey Hongzhuang were simply impossible to refute. In fact, just as Bailey Hongzhuang had said, When Qin Yayan was pregnant, he did not care too much before she was born. If Qin Yayan intentionally concealed this matter, then it was entirely possible to do so. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang said, Qin Yayan did not need to write such a lie in her diary, so there was only one explanation. It was the truth. Even so, I have grown up in the general's home for more than a decade. I hope that General Bailey will be able to live a good life. I believe that the royal family will treat you well, on behalf of Bewitching's reputation. But you and I will return to being strangers. The feelings of Bailey Hongzhuang were calm and indifferent. For Bailey Hongzhuang there really was no emotions left. In the past 10 years, although they had the name of father and daughter, they had not had even the slightest bit of relationship. If she did not care about Qin Yayan, how could she have let them off? When her voice fell, she had already stood up. She was not speaking anymore, and went straight out of the house. She and Bailey Jintao had become strangers. There was nothing to say anymore. Bailey Jintao looked at the back of Bailey Hongzhuang. He had not seen the diary left by Qin Yayan, so he was not sure whether or not she was speaking the truth. However, he was able to confirm that in the future neither he nor Bailey Hongzhuang would have any connection. All of this was ruined by his own hands. Bailey Haoshuan had seen that Bailey Hongzhuang had left with Bewitching, and could not help but enter the house and ask, "Father, what was it she said to you?" Bailey Jintao waved his hand. It was as if he had gotten old in an instant. "She won't be coming back again." As soon as the words were said, Bailey Haoshuan was also stunned. Today Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching were so famous. He too wanted to steal some of their limelight. Listening to the words of his father, he understood that Bailey Hongzhuang was now completely unrelated to their general's home. His wishful thinking was broken just like that, and the expression on Bailey Haoshuan's face became ugly to behold. Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang walked on the street. There were very few pedestrians on the roads. The two figures were shrouded in moonlight. Bewitching's big hand gently clasped over Bailey Hongzhuang's, and his gentle voice suddenly sounded in her ear. "How are you feeling?" The lips of Bailey Hongzhuang curled into a smirk. "You asked me how I was feeling at the banquet? Also there, with everything that has happened." Bewitching looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. He only wanted her to be happy, but he could feel her sorrow. "I was naturally very happy at the banquet. The humiliation suffered in those years has all been completely vented." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled lightly. From now on she would no longer be the former trash of the general's household, who was ridiculed and trampled upon. Instead she had become a person that everyone looked up to. At the general's home, I did not belong there, but I am after all human, and my heart is a bit more touched by this matter. She had all the memories of the original Bailey Hongzhuang, but even so, she was not the original Bailey Hongzhuang, and could not really feel how she felt. Therefore she just pitied the previous Bailey Hongzhuang and sighed. She did not know how she would feel if she knew of everything that had happened. For herself, she is still full of hope. The future is what mattered the most to her. Bewitching's hand was holding Bailey Hongzhuang's tightly. His voice was filled with relief and adoration. "In the future, I am by your side. It is enough to just think about me." The next day the sun was high on the cloudless sky. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching had left Fumbua country after they had cleaned up. The place did not have much meaning for them now. Kanglin College only had 1 month of vacation, and they had already been away for more than half a month. It was time to return to the college. Ji Wenbin, Dong Sairu and Du Tianhua all came to say goodbye. Although no one had said anything, they could still feel that it would take a long time before Bailey Hongzhuang would be coming back. After waving goodbye, Bailey Hongzhuang turned away. Ji Wenbin looked at the two figures who were riding their horses, and his heart was filled with blessings for their happiness. He did not know when he would see Bailey Hongzhuang again. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching returned to Kanglin College, the school was filled with life. Many students had returned, and even more had never left in the first place. Heimu suddenly appeared in front of Bewitching. "Young master." Bewitching nodded slightly. "What is it?" The time Heimu had been with him was not short. Unless something had happened, Heimu would not have directly appeared in front of him and Bailey Hongzhuang without permission. Hearing the words, Mu could not help but glance at Bailey Hongzhuang, and hesitation slightly, his expression showing uncertainty. Beichen just waved his hand. Say it. There should be no secrets between himself and Bailey Hongzhuang. He did not need to hide. Something happened at the sect. Miss Han was very dissatisfied with what happened in the ruins. And those people are about to begin moving. There is a little bit of helplessness in his expression. When the young master was staying at the college, the people of the sect had long since been very vocal. In addition, we have heard about the Jiuping Ziji, but I am afraid that if the little lord does not come out personally, it will be difficult to take it back. Beichen's eyes were filled with calmness when he heard how the people of the sect were uneasy. As soon as he had left, they had already made trouble. He did not know whether or not little master would wait for the sovereign to come back. Then the situation would be much better. Beichen, go on, Bailey Hongzhuang said. I am not in danger at the school. You do not have to worry about me. The Jiuping Ziji is very important. You have to find a way to get it. She believed that Beichen had a way to deal with the problems in the sect. After all, Beichen was silent for 3 years. But he had only spent a few months to settle everything. Now that he left for a few months, what kind of waves could they not already have brewed? She is very worried about the Jiuping Ziji. These were the treasures that could not be found easily. Naturally, they could not let it go. Beichen looked deeply at Bailey Hongzhuang. Worry was evident within his eyes. Is it better if you are coming with me? He was worried about leaving Bailey Hongzhuang here. In case of danger, he would be unable to help her. Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment, but shook her head. A soft smile was on her lips. I cannot walk into your world with my current strength. When I am stronger, I will travel with you all over the world. She understood that with the status of Beichen, those who wanted to deal with him could not be simple characters. If Beichen went out alone, then he would be invincible. However, if she followed, then she would become the weak spot of Beichen. She was naturally unwilling to become a weakness for him. What she wanted was to stay by his side and be able to face the world without fearing any threats and challenges. She was not willing to rely on constantly being protected by Beichen. This was her pride as the owner of the Bailey family, the pride in her heart. Her pride made it impossible for her to just become an accessory, instead of relying on her own strength to achieve her goals. She believed it would not be long before Han Xiling would lose all sense of pride in front of her, because she would completely smash the confidence of the practitioners, who were originally proud in front of her. When Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, he saw her unyielding soul. It was her pride, fierce and strong, firm and determined. If Bailey Hongzhuang had declined for any other reason, he might have refused. However, the reason she declined was this. So he could not find any excuse to refuse her. Because of the pride of Bailey Hongzhuang, he could only give up. As long as he loved her, he would never let her suffer. He knew his own lady's strength. The only times she was not outstanding were when she intentionally underperformed. He believed that it would not be long before she would proudly stand by his side. Mu looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with amazement. He had long since known that she was not an ordinary girl. But now he understood that it was because of this that his little master had been so smitten with her. When he heard the words of Bailey Hongzhuang, he could not help but feel a sense of admiration towards her. Originally, he had worried that Bailey Hongzhuang would have dragged down Beichen's speed of advancement. But now he knew that this was not the case at all. From the few words of Bailey Hongzhuang, he could feel her ambition. Good. Beichen placed a hand on her shoulder. I will settle the things at Tiangang and get my hands on the Jiuping Ziji, after which I'll return to you. The deep black eyes were staring straight at Bailey Hongzhuang, as if Beichen wished to imprint her whole figure into his heart. This was just a short separation. He would return to her soon. However, nowadays he was not at all willing to be separated from Bailey Hongzhuang. He knew that she would understand his worries. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled lightly, and her lips were pulled into a gentle smile. I will wait for your return. The practice at Kanglan College was not helpful to Beichen. He was only there for the sake of accompanying her. Her purpose at the college was to upgrade her strength as soon as possible, so that she could stand side by side with Bewitching. After this, Bewitching left a soft kiss between Bailey Hongzhuang's eyebrows. His eyes were filled with tenderness. Then I'm going. Go. Bailey Hongzhuang was also filled with affection as she looked at Bewitching. When he came back, she would be even stronger. After Bewitching left, Bailey Hongzhuang went alone to the special enrollment dormitory. Hongzhuang, you're back. Before Bailey Hongzhuang had the time to open her door, the door opposite had already been opened and Xia Jiqing stuck out her head, her expression filled with excitement. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled gently as she nodded her head. When did you come back? There is still some time left of the vacation. I returned 2 days ago. I was simply too bored at home, so when I saw the chance I returned to the college, Xia Jiqing laughed. While speaking with Bailey Hongzhuang, she looked back, but she found that she had not even seen a trace of Bewitching, and could not help but wonder. Hongzhuang, did he not return with you? She knew how close those two were. If Bailey Hongzhuang was here, then Bewitching should definitely also be here. He had some things he needed to deal with, and left first. I guess that he will return after a few days. Xia Jiqing's face lit up in understanding. You are right, with the status of Bewitching, he has a lot he needs to deal with. Now the identity of Bewitching was no longer a secret. As the young lord of Tiangang's sect, he had to be very busy. For the sake of accompanying Bailey Hongzhuang, Bewitching must have suffered a lot of pressure. After talking a bit with Xia Jiqing, Bailey Hongzhuang returned to her room. As of now, she had been studying inscriptions for a while. Although she had practiced many times within the chaos ring together with the old man, she had actually still not created an inscription. Taking advantage of the time she had now, it was the best chance to draw an inscription. Practice makes perfect, and every inscription artist needed a large quantity of materials. It was just like an alchemist's also need to be cultivated under the use of numerous herbs. Only after many times would they gain an understanding of the profession. This kind of understanding couldn't be ignored by others. It was an understanding of how many and how much of each material to add. And for an inscription artist, it was especially impotent to know how much force to add. If you had this kind of understanding when writing inscriptions, then the success rate would become much bigger. Bailey Hongzhuang had bought some materials for inscriptions before. The inscriptions she wanted to draw were not difficult, and thus the materials were easy to find. Inscriptions were constructed by different lines and in shapes. Different patterns had different effects, and when they were placed on top of one another the effects would change. In the eyes of others, it may be that the patterns were difficult to understand, and it was hard to see the difference between them. Only the inscriptionists would be able to understand what these patterns meant. Yet just as the alchemists' formulas were confidential, the inscriptionists would not draw their inscriptions while others were looking. Once the inscription was formed, only a simple pattern would be visible. Not even all the structures of the inscription could be seen. Inscriptions were extremely tiresome to make. It took a long time to create an inscription. If there was a problem while making the inscription, one needed to redo it from the start. Bailey Hongzhuang had followed the old man's methods for a very long time in order to master it. The materials required for the different inscriptions were not the same. At the same time, the better materials, the better the inscription's effect became. After creating the red ink and the inscription liquid, she prepared the inscription paper and began drawing. She was not planning on copying the intricate inscriptions this time. She felt that the inscriptions that the old man was teaching her had reached a high level, so instead she tried something simpler. But even so, she could feel that although the level of the inscription was low, the effect was still quite outstanding. For some ordinary cultivators, as long as an inscription was placed onto their weapon, the power of the weapon would soar. One should not underestimate this assistance from the inscription. As long as the power of the weapon was improved, the combat ability of the cultivator would also be improved. Bailey Hongzhuang was calm and tranquil. She picked up her inscription pen and gently dipped it in the inscription liquid before beginning to draw. The red inscription liquid had the same color as cinnabar, but at the same time a subtle golden light shone from it. It was bright and stunning to look at. As the inscription pen touched the inscription paper, she began drawing. Bailey Hongzhuang's spirit had reached the highest levels, and all her focus was placed upon the inscription she was drawing. As an alchemist, she had always been able to concentrate. She had, at this moment in time, put all her focus onto the inscription. There was nothing else on her mind. Even before she touched the paper with the pen, she had already decided upon which pattern to draw, so she did not hesitate at all and drew it smoothly. All inscriptions needed to be fluent, and there was not allowed to be even one point where the drawing was uneven or broken. If such an occurrence happened, then the inscription would be flawed and not work. Not only this, the strength of which the pen was being used, the shaking of one's hands, or uneven amounts of inscription liquid, would also lead to failure of the inscriptions. Because of this, it was harder to become an inscriptionist than an alchemist. It was also because of this that inscriptionists were even rarer than alchemists. When Bailey Hongzhuang had finished drawing, she found that there were some errors that she had not seen when she had practiced. There had been a few pauses and she had stagnated when drawing, which had resulted in the inscription being unusable. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not care about failing. Failure was the mother of success. She had prepared so many materials and was ready to fail. The second time ended in failure. The third time also ended in failure. It was not until the eighth time that Bailey Hongzhuang was finally able to draw the lines smoothly enough with the inscription pen. She found that the reasons behind her previous failures were not enough control over the pen. On the ninth time, after drawing more than half the inscription, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly found that she did not have enough inscription liquid. All her previous tries had used it all up. 10th time ended in failure as well. Little Black and Little White alongside Baisher sat down in a row, and were quietly watching Bailey Hongzhuang constantly fail, their hearts shaking slightly. When their master was serious, it was quite terrible. She did not seem to have any idea of what failure meant. No signs of frustration, only persistence shone through her eyes. As long as you persisted, you would succeed sooner or later. The three beasts kept quiet, not daring to disturb Bailey Hongzhuang, but they kept staying by her side to show support. It was not before the 21st time that Bailey Hongzhuang managed to succeed in drawing an inscription. The lips of Bailey Hongzhuang slowly spread into a smile. After experiencing 20 failures, she had finally made an inscription. Finally a successful drawing. Looking at the six-pointed star pattern, Bailey Hongzhuang looked satisfied. She then placed it to the side and began drawing again. She had understood the method and naturally had to try again. Chapter 628. Tianxiang Auction House 22nd attempt was a failure. 23rd was also a failure. On the 30th attempt, Bailey Hongzhuang was once again successful in drawing an inscription. Compared to the previous success rate, it had not increased. In the end, Bailey Hongzhuang drew 3 inscriptions, not because she was not willing to draw more, but because she had run out of inscription fluid. If she wants to continue, she has to create more inscription fluid, but in her current state it is not a good idea to continue. She has already consumed a lot of her mental power. Although creating inscriptions does not require any strength, it requires mental energy. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang stop, the three beasts quickly went over to her. Little Black and Little White began massaging her shoulders, while Baisher massaged her back. Bailey Hongzhuang had decided to pick up inscriptions, but she understood that it would take a long time to practice. As for the effect of the inscription she just drew, she is not too sure. It is better to sell them first, and then understand the market. In her previous life, she did not know a lot about inscriptions. Even now she does not know anyone who practices inscriptons. Inscriptionists are simply too rare. The next day, Bailey Hongzhuang went to the auction house with her 3 inscriptions. Even in Lan City were no shops selling inscriptions. The reason why she did not sell the inscriptions at the college was because it was her first attempt at drawing an inscription. She could not be sure of the effect. She does not know what the market price is like, so she can't ask for just any price. She could auction it, but many students would raise the price since she was the one auctioning it. And if the inscription was not up to standard, she would suffer in the end. So, after all this consideration, she can only choose the auction house. She had faith in the appraisers of the auction house, should have some kind of understanding of inscriptons. And as to what price it was fetching at the auction, she did not care too much. When Bailey Hongzhuang went to the auction house, she wore a black cloak. She was not willing to disclose her identity. When you are new to a field, not standing out is the best action to take. Tianxiang Auction House was located in several cities in the Shengxian mainland, and Lan City had their own Tianxiang Auction House. Bailey Hongzhuang did not hesitate to enter. She has a good impression of the auction house, and they also have a good reputation. After the appraisers saw the 3 inscriptions, their attitude towards Bailey Hongzhuang changed. The number of inscriptions are very rare. Some inscription masters directly inscribe upon a weapon, so most of the inscriptions you can find on paper are not high-level inscriptions. Even so, the inscription will still be sought after by many practitioners, and these lower-leveled inscriptions have a huge market. Every cultivator wants to improve the power of themselves and their weapons, and how many cultivators are there in Shengxian mainland? He can't even imagine it. For this reason, the inscriptions are a hot item everyone wants. "Girl, what effect does your inscription have?" the appraiser asked. Bailey Hongzhuang paused for a moment before she said, "It is a fire attribute inscription. Once it is used, it will summon a flame and improve the ability to kill your opponents." After listening to Bailey Hongzhuang, the eyes of the appraiser brightened. "This item, our auction house would like to accept." After handing over the inscription to the appraiser, Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the college. This inscription was of the simplest kind, and thus she did not expect the price of the inscription at the auction to be high. What she wanted to know was the effect of the weapon, and after the owner made a move, she believed that she would see it. As long as the person was from Lan City, she believed that she would get to hear about it. After returning to her dormitory, Bailey Hongzhuang went into closed-door cultivation. She placed all her mental energy on making inscriptions, and when the mental energy was used up, she began cultivating. When her mental power had been restored, she would continue drawing inscriptions, using all her time on making inscriptions or cultivating. Every time her mental energy was exhausted, she would become pale, and there would be a sense of loss in her mind. However, Bailey Hongzhuang found that during this process, her mental strength had actually improved. Her mental strength was already very strong when compared with normal people, so it is very difficult to improve her mental strength. She did not think that this method would prove to be helpful. After this, Bailey Hongzhuang was even more focused. She became too busy to be tired. During this practice session, her inscriptions also improved a lot. As she was drawing the same inscription, she no longer cared about the effect of the inscription. What she wanted was to grasp the feeling of drawing it. There was a difference between alchemy and inscription. Every time an alchemist refined a new pill, there would be a huge challenge. Even if it was refined for the first time, it might not be successful the second time. Inscriptions were different, however. As long as the inscription master mastered the method of drawing an inscription, the success rate would instantly increase. One success, even if the next inscription was another version, as long as the structure of the inscription was understood, the success rate of drawing another inscription would also increase. Therefore, it was harder to become an inscriptionist, but when you mastered the essence, it became much simpler. Unfortunately, this was the most difficult thing, and also the reason that many couldn't become inscriptionists. 3 days later, Bailey Hongzhuang received the money from the Tianxiang auction house. Looking at the money, Bailey Hongzhuang was also slightly stunned. It seemed that the inscription was extremely popular on the market. Her inscription was a simple inscription, but it still had fetched a very good price. Unfortunately, the person who bought the inscription that Bailey Hongzhuang had made was not from the city. As soon as he had purchased it, he left Lan City. This result made Bailey Hongzhuang feel slightly helpless. She wanted to take a look at the specific effect of the inscription. Now it seemed she had to buy a weapon and try it out herself. As for her glass sword, It was naturally impossible. Even if she wanted to inscribe something onto the glass sword in the future, it had to be an excellent inscription. Using her current inscriptions on the glass sword would simply be a waste and a shame. In the meantime, she kept the glass sword close to her. When she was in the ruins, she had left her mark on the glass sword, but the glass sword had not approved of her yet. Once a weapon reached a certain level, it would gain a spirit, and it would choose its owner for itself. Even if you were to use the sword, if the sword had not acknowledged you as its owner, then it was impossible to exert all the strength of the glass sword. After handing over the inscription to the appraiser, Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the college. This inscription was of the simplest kind, and thus she did not expect the price of the inscription at the auction to be high. What she wanted to know was the effect of the weapon, and after the owner made a move, she believed that she would see it. As long as the person was from Lan City, she believed that she would get to hear about it. After returning to her dormitory, Bailey Hongzhuang went into closed-door cultivation. She placed all her mental energy on making inscriptions, and when the mental energy was used up, she began cultivating. When her mental power had been restored, she would continue drawing inscriptions, using all her time on making inscriptions or cultivating. Every time her mental energy was exhausted, she would become pale, and there would be a sense of loss in her mind. However, Bailey Hongzhuang found that during this process, her mental strength had actually improved. Her mental strength was already very strong when compared with normal people, so it is very difficult to improve her mental strength. She did not think that this method would prove to be helpful. After this, Bailey Hongzhuang was even more focused. She became too busy to be tired. During this practice session, her inscriptions also improved a lot. As she was drawing the same inscription, she no longer cared about the effect of the inscription. What she wanted was to grasp the feeling of drawing it. There was a difference between alchemy and inscription. Every time an alchemist refined a new pill, there would be a huge challenge. Even if it was refined for the first time, it might not be successful the second time. Inscriptions were different, however. As long as the inscription master mastered the method of drawing an inscription, the success rate would instantly increase. One success, even if the next inscription was another version, as long as the structure of the inscription was understood, the success rate of drawing another inscription would also increase. Therefore, it was harder to become an inscriptionist, but when you mastered the essence, it became much simpler. Unfortunately, this was the most difficult thing, and also the reason that many couldn't become inscriptionists. 3 days later, Bailey Hongzhuang received the money from the Tianxiang auction house. Looking at the money, Bailey Hongzhuang was also slightly stunned. It seemed that the inscription was extremely popular on the market. Her inscription was a simple inscription, but it still had fetched a very good price. Unfortunately, the person who bought the inscription that Bailey Hongzhuang had made was not from the city. As soon as he had purchased it, he left Lan City. This result made Bailey Hongzhuang feel slightly helpless. She wanted to take a look at the specific effect of the inscription. Now it seemed she had to buy a weapon and try it out herself. As for her glass sword, it was naturally impossible. Even if she wanted to inscribe something onto the glass sword in the future, it had to be an excellent inscription. Using her current inscriptions on the glass sword would simply be a waste and a shame. In the meantime, she kept the glass sword close to her. When she was in the ruins, she had left her mark on the glass sword, but the glass sword had not approved of her yet. Once a weapon reached a certain level, it would gain a spirit, and it would choose its owner for itself. Even if you were to use the sword, if the sword had not acknowledged you as its owner, then it was impossible to exert all the strength of the glass sword. Bailey Hongzhuang had inherited the inheritance of Bewitching in the ruins, and Bewitching was very generous towards Bailey Hongzhuang. Not only did she give her best martial arts technique to Bailey Hongzhuang, she also helped he erase the mark that had belonged to her on the glass sword. Bewitching was a strong person, and the glass sword was used by her all year round. The mark on it was deeply etched into the sword. If she relied on her own strength and wanted to completely remove Bewitching's imprint, then it would be hard. If she was Bailey Hongzhuang from before the rebirth, it would have been no problem for her at all to remove the mark. But now her strength was much weaker. With Bai Qing's help, there was now a tacit understanding between herself and the sword. She also felt more comfortable with the sword, and she knew it would become her weapon in the future. Knock! She suddenly heard a knock on her door, and Bailey Hongzhuang put away the things she used for inscriptions before she opened it. Outside, Xia Jiqing was looking at her with worried expression. Hongzhuang, are you trying too hard? How long do you plan on being in closed-door cultivation? Since she came back from Fengbao country, she had been in retreat every day long. She knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was in closed-door cultivation, but this was too long, was it not? When she entered, she would not come out at all. Although Bailey Hongzhuang had always done her very best, this was too exaggerated, was it not? Hongzhuang, you never come out these days. Jiqing is very worried about you. Bai Junyu also appeared. If it wasn't because we sometimes heard movements inside, we would have thought that you had fainted. When practitioners went into closed-door cultivation, it could be long or short. Some of those with abnormal strength even spent decades. But with their current strength, it was really a long time that Bailey Hongzhuang had been closed up. If it was him, he was afraid that being in the room for so long would kill him. There was a slight smile on the face of Bailey Hongzhuang. She had always been serious about what she did. In her eyes, the closed-door cultivation was not long, but in the eyes of Xia Jiqing it was indeed far too long. Is everything all right since you are looking for me? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Xia Jiqing nodded her head. The headmaster asked us special enrollment students to go to the principal's office. There should be something to announce. I see. Bailey Hongzhuang understood instantly. The principal would only call for them if there was something to announce. She just didn't know what it was this time. Hongzhuang, when you went into closed-door cultivation this time, Dongfang Yu came to ask about you. But everyone was worried that you were in a dangerous position, so we dared not bother you. Today I heard sounds from inside, so I dared knock on your door. Xia Jiqing sighed as she looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. She heard that Gong Shaoqing was a cultivation madman. But now it seemed as if the madness of Bailey Hongzhuang was no less than Gong Shaoqing. Sorry about worrying you. There was a slight bit of apology in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. During this time she had devoted her heart to inscriptions, and had not cared about anything else. Only the time she went out to sell the inscription at the auction. It seemed that they all thought she had gone out to buy dry food. As long as nothing is wrong, Xia Jiqing smiled brightly. Clean up and we'll go to the principal's office. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly freshened up and walked out of the dormitory. Here she saw Dongfang Yu, Gong Shaoqing, and the others had all gathered and were waiting for her alone. You're all here, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. When they saw her, there were smiles on their faces, but there was no shortage of worry in their eyes. Hongzhuang, you were in retreat for so long, everyone were worried you had an accident. Dongfang Yu walked to the side of Bailey Hongzhuang. A pretty and youthful face was filled with some concern. Bailey Hongzhuang gently waved her hand. Don't worry about me. I am used to going into closed-door cultivation, so I stayed in the room for too long without realizing it. Hearing this, everyone was somewhat stunned, and then they could not help but laugh helplessly. The closed-door cultivation of Bailey Hongzhuang made them worried and sad. If she retreated often, wouldn't that? Everyone looked at one another, and saw that the worry had not dissipated from the others' eyes. They had been friends with Bailey Hongzhuang for a while, but they had never seen her go into such a retreat before. They had already heard from Xia Jiqing that Bewitching was not at the college because of something back at the Tiangang sect. They all know the identity of Bewitching, and Han Xiling is definitely not a simple character. At the ruins, Han Xiling already expressed her attitude. They were afraid that Han Xiling would go between Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching, and that their relationship would much more complicated. When Bailey Hongzhuang mentioned this matter to Xia Jiqing, it was not taken serious. However, now that she had been so desperate in closed-door cultivation, it could only be connected to Bewitching. It was not only Xia Jiqing who thought like this. Dongfang Yu and the others were thinking the same. You're fine, that's all that matters. Let's go to the principal's office. Dongfang Yu smiled and held the hand of Bailey Hongzhuang, only thinking about how it was possible for him to make her happier. Xia Jiqing nodded her head. Let's go, otherwise they would have to wait for us. As soon as the voice fell, they made their way towards the principal's office. On the way, the feelings of Bailey Hongzhuang felt different from before. What the difference was she could not pinpoint. She could only feel a slight change. She felt a bit strange. Soon everyone arrived at the principal's office. President Ren Tianxiong and the vice principal Huan Chuyu were both there. After seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang and all the others had arrived, the faces of the principal and the vice principal both showed a smile. Principal, vice principal, they greeted them. Ren Tianxiong's face held a slight smile. Today I called you here because I have something to tell you. Everyone's eyes gathered on Ren Tianxiong's body. They already knew that he had to tell them something, but none of them knew what it was. Does anyone here know about Lingying College? Ren Tianxiong slowly asked. Hearing the question, a strange color appeared on the faces of the people present. The name of Lingying College was one they had naturally heard about before. However, they did not understand why he was asking this question. Bailey Hongzhuang also had a certain understanding of the Lingying College. When she had been recruited by Fu Hongba and Lu Huayan, they had told her a bit about the colleges on the Shengxian mainland. The Kanglin College and the Lingying College were the same, as in both places existed to train cultivators. However, Lingying College had a much more resounding reputation than Kanglin College. Amongst the colleges, it was the best of the best. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.